understand what's the difference between quality and the nutrition and other aspects. Therefore, world need to feed those who cannot afford, as well as those who are demanding greater quantities because of the affordability they have. Sri Lankan dilemma is also that we still have certain segment of our population demanding food, but at the same time certain segment, the available food here is relatively cheap compared to the world markets. Similarly, Sri Lanka is also feeding part of its food supply to the rest of the world. Quite a fair amount of our fish, quite a fair amount of our good quality fruits, quite a fair amount of our good quality vegetable moves out from Sri Lanka in the form of exports, feeding fairly niche markets in the world. So in that context, we need to address this, and our government, rightly in my view, incrementally, in a continuous search for an enlightened agricultural policy, in 2011 budget, His Excellency thought there must be at least 100,000 backyard agricultural economy in Sri Lanka. And that is how the seed was created for the currently and rapidly expanding Divinaguma initiative, now almost reaching the entire population. It essentially ensures that everybody has some micro level food security, nutrition, and also fair amount of environment within the agrarian culture.
Our guest of honor for this occasion, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, is in Rome at the moment and does send his regrets as not being able to be here in person. However, his speech will be delivered by the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. D.B.T. Wijeratna.
Good morning, Honorable Ministers, Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen. I come here with the sincere apologies of my Minister, Honorable Mahindayappa Abeyewardena, Minister of Agriculture, for his absence, as he has to attend an important meeting on food security at FAO headquarters, Rome. Hence, I will read the speech. I quote, "It is always a great pleasure and honor for me to be among the gathering of this important conference. My ministry, in conjunction with CIC Agribusiness, has been tirelessly working organizing this important event. As I understand, the main objective of the conference is to inform, influence, and catalyze actions by key stakeholders, identifying challenges and opportunities for Sri Lanka in order to ensure national food and nutritional security. In other words, the conference is working towards setting the center stage for all stakeholders of the agriculture sector to work together in coming up with lasting strategies of unleashing the potential of agriculture for improved, nutritious, and healthy nation, and not just eradicating hunger. The agriculture sector falls in each of two broad areas of the initiative: food security for all, which is in the line with our traditional agriculture policy, and then nutrition-focused development, which have to be incorporated in the agriculture policy in the present context. It is therefore clear that the theme of conference is indeed important and timely. Perhaps as a country, we have not yet exhausted the potential of agriculture to improve people's nutrition as well as their health. Nevertheless, I do not think this outstanding issue is a mammoth task for us, since we have already have the structures for such initiative on the ground. What needs to be done is simply to rejuvenate the existing linkages for better outcomes. The agriculture sector therefore needs to ensure food and nutrition security in this country, as well as generate incomes that can be spent by people, including farmers, on health and nutritional care, in addition to other uses. In turn, this will enhance productivity of people, hence achieving food and nutritional security. Hence, it is very clear that the strong linkages in the food security and nutrition are integral to economic growth of our country and should be achieved and maintained at all costs. I have confidence that our interaction would unfold tangible ways of bringing out the best approaches that can sustainably achieve this necessity. Before I go any further, let me remind you of a couple of success stories of agriculture sector in the recent past. We have achieved self-sufficiency in rice and maize since this year. This is mainly due to the sound leadership of His Excellency, the President of Sri Lanka, which created a conducive environment for various stakeholders in the agriculture sector to participate in the developmental programs. However, still we are importing chili, onion, green gram, groundnut, potato, and many others which can be grown in Sri Lanka. It is for this reason Ministry of Agriculture has implemented special program to increase the production of these commodities. Also, we cannot be happy about the nutritional status of the population. About 20% of the children under 5 years are underweight, 15% are wasted, and 18% are stunted. About 30% school-going children are anemic and also deficient in vitamin A. Also, lifestyle diseases are on the increase, and the diabetic seems to be a very common condition among the adults of Sri Lanka. This is partly due to poor dietary habits and the food that is easily accessible to majority of the people in this country. The diet of the people is dominated by rice in Sri Lanka. It is for this reason that the Ministry of Agriculture has put in place deliberate policies to promote agriculture diversification and dietary improvement, especially for vulnerable categories. The ministry implements a number of activities, including campaigns to teach people regarding the food groups and the importance of dietary diversity. In these awareness programs, issues of food safety during all stages of food producing cycle, including growing, storage, processing, and utilization, are emphasized to all stakeholders in an effort to improve the safe usage of inputs in the food system. To complement this, farmers are encouraged to diversify their food production, especially to pulses, fruits, vegetables, and fruits and vegetables, which will make these commodities affordable to the consumers as good sources of nutrients. The Home Garden program under Divinaguma, implemented by the Ministry of Economic Development, plays an important role in increasing production and household consumption, especially vegetables. In this process of improving food and nutritional security, the support we get from the private sector is a key element for upgrading and updating the agriculture sector, especially in the input sectors such as seed, machinery, and agrochemicals. Collaboration shown by the private sector and the Department of Agriculture is really a welcome gesture in upbringing status of Sri Lankan agriculture. This conference has brought all stakeholders of agriculture to work together in order to achieve Sri Lanka that is free of food and nutritional issues. I am reassured that one of the expected outcomes of this conference is to suggest best strategies to ensure food security towards nutritious and healthy nation, overcoming future challenges. I therefore urge all participants to actively participate in this conference and bring forward your ideas in trying to unleash the potential of agriculture to improve food and nutritional status of Sri Lanka. Thank you. Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena, Minister of Agriculture. Unquote.
Please welcome our conference moderator and chairperson, Dr. Tahan M. Durga.
Minister and representative of the government, organizers, sponsors, representatives of the agribusiness, agri-associations, food processors, locally and foreign food processors in Sri Lanka, non-governmental organizations, research institutes, universities, financial institutions, and of course the free media, all present. I learned yesterday to say Ayu Bowan, and thank you for inviting me to your beautiful country, and hopefully I can make a contribution in helping to get Sri Lanka into the international trade. Our first speaker, Mr. Sudhakar Tomar.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. It's my honor and privilege to be here in this wonderful city, Colombo, and my most beautiful country, Sri Lanka, one of my favorite countries. First of all, as is customary, I must thank and say my gratitude to organizers, especially Ministry of Agriculture and CIC, who have at the very right time, have organized this critically important conference on national food and nutrition security. Normally, we hear the word national food security, but we have added the dimension of nutrition. So it's very important that this conference has been organized. And I want to thank the chairman, Mr. RBL Fernando, Mr. Samantha Rantunga, Mr. Kirthi, and the wonderful organizing team, chaired by Mr. Sanarat, who have really put in lots of hard work, effort, and courage to transform an idea into this wonderful conference. So a big round of applause for all of them. Before I start anything, let me say I'm standing here in front of you in 3 capacities. First of all, I stand in front of you as a farmer. My family and extended family, many relatives are still engaged in small-scale farming back home in northern part of India. So I understand, although I stand here, I understand the plight of a small and marginal farmer in third world country. Also, I stand in front of you as a business person doing agribusiness since 22 years in 30 countries. We supply, we trade, we farm, we process, we export, import more than 1.5 million tons of food commodities from 30 countries, which go to 1,000 customers in 90 destinations. And last, but probably the most important, I am standing here as a community worker or a social worker on behalf of International Pulses Trade and Industry Confederation, which represents, it's a non-profit association affiliated with the United Nations and FAO. It has 5,000 members from 50 countries, representing a production size of 60 million tons valued at $100 billion. The role of International Pulses Trade Industry Confederation, Sri Lanka is also an important member, and many companies and processing industries from here are also part of that, is how it fits in overall scenario of global food crisis and how it can solve. We will also discuss a little bit about that. But before I start, the whole concept of global food crisis or problem, because of its political nature, subsidies, political nature, involvement of biodiesel and biofuel, and also the climate change debate is so complicated, controversial, at times also deeply polarized, that so many perceptions are around it. So I said, before I start, let me share you a light-hearted survey which was sent by United Nations to different countries. And the questions they posed to all the countries they sent the survey was, would you please give your honest opinion about the solution to the food shortage in the rest of the world? I repeat, would you please give your honest opinion about the solution to the food shortage in the rest of the world? The results came, but there was no conclusion and there was no consensus, because In the Eastern Europe and Asia, they didn't know what the honest meant, so they couldn't come up with an answer. In the Western Europe and developed world, they had no idea what the shortage was. In South America, they didn't know how to say please. In USA, they simply didn't know what the rest of the world was. They still called their foreign minister the Secretary of State. In China, they didn't know what the opinion was. In the Middle East, where I come from, I've been based in the Middle East since 1995. In the Middle East, we had no idea what the solution was. We still don't know. And in Africa, they simply didn't know what the food was. So this is the kind of polarization of the opinion or the problems this food crisis we are faced with. So what we'll do, the presentation I'll keep very simple. We'll look at the genesis of the food crisis. What is our current status? And we are very fortunate because the recent FAO data has been released in September, so we are pretty current with the data. And what we can do in our individual and organizational capacity or as a confederation capacity to help solve the problem. So in 1971, Henry Kissinger, standing very proudly in front of United Nations FAO, very proudly he claimed in 1971 that within 10 years' time, there will be not even a single hungry person on the face of earth, and they will eradicate all the poverty related to food problems. And even after 42 years, when the final declaration was done a couple of years back in FAO, it was officially declared that 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night, and every 3 to 4 seconds a child dies of hunger. These concerns were also highlighted in the food crisis, which has been happening since 2007-2008, and also ongoing Arabian Springs, because hunger is a very powerful thing. If you can keep a person uneducated, you can keep a person without house, but you cannot keep a person hungry. He will revolt. So we had food riots in 30 countries. Many governments were thrown out, and millions were added to this list of hungry people. But what we must remember that this was not so much to say food crisis. It was more of a food prices crisis. And there is nothing called food insecurity. It is just inability to buy the sufficient food at the right time. Before I go any further, let me just ask you, I like to have this interactive session. How many people here in the audience, respected delegates, believe that there is sufficient food in the world? Just by a show of hand, how many people here believe that there is sufficient food in the world? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. Very nice. So let's look at briefly, it's a little bit macro side, how did we reach here? How did we reach this interesting position of the food shortage, not only in the South Asia and Sri Lanka, or all globally? In fact, we all are responsible for this food crisis since the beginning. But in last 2-3 decades, there has been serious underinvestment into agriculture, which led to stagnant or flat global food production.
We now have a 10-minute question and answer session.
My question is, since there is a change in food habits, especially among the urban people in most of these Asian countries, what is lacking now is the balanced diet. You know, a balanced diet. Not going to process it in the way that you are saying, but a balanced diet. Now, what we are trying to say here is that there should be a balanced diet that will prevent all this malnutrition, especially hidden hunger and so on. But you did not lay much emphasis on that aspect here in your lecture.
I absolutely agree with you that there should be balanced diet. What we are here emphasizing is that there should be balanced diet. There should not be over-dependence on animal protein. This is the key message I want to give here. So as long as there is a balanced diet, there is absolutely no issue. And that over-dependence on animal protein, if we can replace that some portion, not everything, even a very small fraction of that, if we can replace it with vegetable protein, a healthy protein, that alone is sufficient to address the global food shortage at the moment.
Mahatma Gandhi has said that resources of the world, including food, is enough for the need, but not for the greed. Then you have mentioned that there is enough food in the world. The problem is the greed of the greed of the people. Now, what is the mechanism to eradicate this greed